last years of the 19th century, that human affairs were being watched from the timeless worlds of space. No one could have dreamed we were being scrutinized as someone with a microscope studies creatures that swarm and multiply in a drop of water. Few men even considered the possibility of life on other planets. And yet, across the gulf of space, minds immeasurably superior to ours regarded this Earth with envious eyes. And slowly and surely, they drew their plans against us.
Broadcasting live
from a tiny studio somewhere in North America.
This is Dark Matters Radio Live. And now I give you your host,
the silverback of ufology.
Here's Don Ecker.
And greetings. Golly, it's great to be back, gang. We've been off the last 2 weeks. I guess an explanation is basically due you all. A couple of weeks ago, okay, after my broadcast with UAP Crossfire, I put my computer away. I've got a laptop. What I've been basically doing, I've been using a laptop for all these shows. And it was a system that I bought several years ago. It was a refurbished system, okay, worked spectacularly. But a couple of weeks ago, I used AVG on my system to search for viruses and that kind of stuff. And it notified me that I had a number of drivers in my computer that were vastly out of date. It was telling me there could be problems, this, that, and everything. So I mean, hell, I've been doing computers since 1987 when I had my first system. It was a Tandy Radio Shack 1000EX. Now, if you look that up online, you're going to be shocked. The computer was basically a freaking keyboard, and it ran on one 5.25-inch floppy drive. And but I'll tell you what, a love affair started with that system. Now, today, if I had that thing, other than sticking it in a museum, that would be about all it's good for. But God, that got me on the road. So I've been doing computers. I knew that drivers can cause a problem. So I went hunting and pecking, and I downloaded some drivers, and bingo. The next thing I knew, suddenly, I had no audio, none. I couldn't stick my microphone in there. I had no way to get any audio out. So I went up to settings. I went up to my system. I checked everything. It told me my audio was in there, but I couldn't call anything up. Nothing would show up on that system. So I got freaked, and I called our producer, Bill. Bill is very good with computer stuff. We worked on it for an hour or so. Nothing. I talked to Mark, my buddy, who is one of the co-hosts on this show. Mark is a computer whiz. Nothing. So I broke down and I called up the local Geek Squad. Now, I've never been to the Geek Squad before. And although about a year ago, my wife, Vicky, had some problems with her computer that she took in there. So I called them up, had to make an appointment, went over, carried my system over there, told them what the problem was. They sent it back to the technician. I sit there on my ass for almost an hour waiting. And finally they came out and said, your speakers are shot. And I'm like, Say that again. My speakers are shot. Yeah. No shit. I think I told you that when I came in here. Well, the long and the short of it was, I said, well, can you fix it? No, we don't order speakers. You what? You don't order them. Why not? Well, that's not what we do. But you can order them and then bring them in here. Well, the long and the short, it cost me $100 to go in there and have them tell me something I already knew. Well, needless to say, I'll never darken that doorway again. And if you're smart, and I'm not gonna tell you what to do, but if you're thinking about a computer repair shop, I'd think somewhere else before I thought there. So, ended up getting a new refurbished computer. Actually, the one that I'm broadcasting on right now is a bit better. It's got more bells and whistles than the other one did. But hey, upward and onward. And needless to say, a lot of weird stuff going on in fields and fields associated with what we deal with here. For example, tomorrow, the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, has called in a, God only knows why, major call-in of all the star rank, brigadier generals and up, rear admirals all the way up, to talk about who knows what. Now, I have heard some rumors. One of the rumors I heard is that this might deal with 3I/Atlas. What do I think about that? Well, I'll be honest. I don't have a clue. And there are other rumors swirling about. For example, some rumors that I came across is that Red China might be contemplating making an excursion to Taiwan. Who knows? But I guess we'll find out sooner or later. But speaking of 3I/Atlas, and I have no idea if this is real, but I have seen two different reels on the internet about this. Allegedly, something struck 3I/Atlas on its way into the solar system. A tremendous bang that, according to both these reels, stopped the tumbling and turning that this thing was doing. Nobody, according to these reels, know what it was. It's as if something deliberately struck it. Now, if you have any conception of how empty space can be, that would seem to me that it would almost have to be a directed impact if it's true. I have no idea if it's true. But upward and onward. Tonight's show, we're going to be doing a jump into modern internet and social areas, dealing with primarily the UFO/UAP topic. Our guest is a gentleman from Germany. He's called online, and his channel is The Sneezing Monkey. I told him when I first met him before the show aired, I said, I personally have a problem calling anybody monkey, okay, on my show. So I'm going to give you a name. This is the name I'm going to use, and it's Wolf for Wolfgang, okay? Now, is that his name? Probably not, but that's what I'm going to call him. And of course, joining us as they do each week are my two co-hosts, Mr. Mark Center, Mr. Gary Cassell. And gentlemen, welcome back to the show. We are now on the air again. And hey, let's get this thing going. Bill, please bring on our friend Wolfie. Hey, Wolf.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It's great to be here.
You
I think
bet.
we have some of your people in the chat.
Yeah, really. I'm not monitoring chat, to be honest. I did send a sneaky message over on our Discord, though, so they might be there.
Well,
I
I
hope
know
they're
my
respectful.
fiance is in shit. Anima Confusa is my fiance, and she's in the chat right now. So,
Right.
of course, she's saying hi to you, Don. She doesn't say hi to me.
Hey, Danny, my little strudel.
God. Can someone maybe make a counter of like how many German words get shredded tonight by people attempting to say them properly? That's number one. I'll make a list. Actually.
And by the way, Monkey, are you paying attention to what's going on in our private chat? Half the comedy's in the private chat right now.
Oh, okay. No, I have not been. No, I have not.
Mark says, does a bang in space? And I said, no, I'd love to bang in space.
Yeah. No, but
Danny
to be honest
says-
with you, if I may, I don't want to interrupt, but like,
No, go ahead.
I'm quite surprised that you guys bring me on because I thought you guys are much more in the believer field, and obviously, I'm not the kind of person.
We want to believe. We want to believe.
That's fair, and
we
that's
just
fair,
feel there's
right?
a lot of bullshit artists out there.
Fair enough.
Oh, Wolfie, you don't know me, buddy. You really don't.
I'm actually far closer to you and Mick West. I leave open the possibility. I've been at this since the 80s. But there's so much horse shit out there, much more now than even in the 90s when Jaime Maussan graced the world with his videos, that it's just insanity at this point. So what Mick West has done is a gold mine of confirmable performance enhanced goodness. I mean, it's just crazy how quick his team can come up. You do a similar thing, but in a little different, more entertaining way. And you are funny for a German, I will say. And I think
that's the nicest thing he's going to say to you, buddy.
Yes, I think Jagari was much more in the unvarnished believer, and then he met me and Don to a certain extent, and he's calmed
they ruined
down a
me,
bit.
Monkey. They ruined me.
Right. But no, I found you first, and then I sent your stuff to Jagari. Don, he doesn't really go to YouTube and all that stuff. He's busy doing whatever he does. But I found you. And I was
he is
hooked.
a boomer, just so you know.
Yes, he's the most boomer on the camera. So
yeah.
Well, let me set the stage real quick. Wolfie, I'll tell you what, pal. I've had 3 very notable sightings of something. Okay. Actually 4 if I count. Well, I'll tell you about them. The first one, I'm originally from the East Coast of the United States, Pennsylvania. And where I grew up, we had, and I guess still do, although it's been decades since I've been back, a very strong hunting culture. Okay. And every year when I was growing up, right at the beginning of the month of December, our deer season opened. And that was similar to Christmas, Halloween, and Thanksgiving, all being wrapped up together. It was a huge holiday. As a matter of fact, they even gave the first day of deer hunting season off to the students, okay, high school students. So anyway, first day of deer season, I was out with 3 friends. We were deer hunting at a place in Pennsylvania, Central Western, around what is known as the Horseshoe Curve. And that was an engineering marvel in the 19th century. It's a railroad area, and it was basically how railroad trains could move from the East Coast around the curve out west towards Chicago. Now, we were up on this mountainside. Well, in Pennsylvania, they were called mountains. Out here, they'd barely be little hills. But at any rate, we were up there hunting. And about 4:15 p.m., As we're coming down, it's getting dark. It was cold. Okay. We had seen nothing all day long. We're walking down the hill. We're going to go to our cars and go home. And suddenly, one of my friends behind me stopped and he started yelling, "My God, look, look, look." And the first thing that crossed my mind was this dumbass saw a deer and now it's gone. And I turned around to chew him out, and he was looking up in the sky. And there were 4 brilliant lights in a diamond formation overflying us. Now, I don't know, but I'm going to guess they were maybe 12, 13, 14,000 feet high. And they were going at a very leisurely pace. And as they overflew us, the light in the rear suddenly, with no warning, shot straight up in the sky like a missile taking off, only it was faster. And when that happened, suddenly the other 3 lights, now in a V formation, hit a burst of speed, and they were out of sight in seconds. Well, I was unaware of anything even remotely like that being reported at that time. Later, when I decided to enter this field, I did a very in-depth historical analysis that went on for about 6 months. I haunted libraries. I went to used bookstores. Anything I could find on the subject, I grabbed. And I began calling what then were the main illuminated lights in the UFO field, the people I talked to, like Bruce Maccabee, Stanton Friedman, Linda Howe, Bill Moore, Jamie Chandra. Now, those names may or may not be familiar to you. Well, let me just say this. That convinced me. Now, I'm not saying E.T. I never said I thought it was extraterrestrial. But if I had to make a bet, I would bet toward that explanation. That was the first one. The second one was back in the 90s. One of my dearest friends who passed away a few years ago, a fellow by the name of Richard Saraday. Richard and I were going over to Las Vegas. I had received a call at UFO Magazine from a guy over there that purportedly found a series of photographs in a table he had purchased at a used furniture store. Now, this guy thought they might be something. And when he called me up, he said, "I'll sell them for $10,000. And I said, 10,000? Boy, they better be some damn good pictures. Well, we ended up going over. And when we got there, this guy and his wife were almost destitute. They were literally breaking up furniture to burn to get heat. He showed me the photographs. They were photographs of the bombing range out in the Nevada desert. Nothing anomalous about it other than bomb craters. Well, we ended up saying, nah, sorry, pal. There's nothing there. And we each gave him $20, okay? Because I felt bad for the guy, and $20 is about all I could afford. Well, he gave us the pictures. I still have them, I think, in my garage somewhere. But on the way back, coming from Las Vegas up toward LA, there's a runoff there on the interstate. It's called Zizek's Road. And we had to take a comfort stop. We had been drinking coffee all day long. And this is in a really out-of-the-way place. So we pulled off. we're out there just resting. And suddenly Richard looked up in the sky and he said, "My God, what's that?" And I looked up and there were these, well, they were up there pretty high and it was night. Okay, so you could see them moving. The series of little tiny lights. Now, what was weird about that was every time a jet would fly toward Vegas coming from LAX, the Los Angeles airport, these things would stop, freeze in place, wait until the jet passed by, and then they would start their maneuvering again. Weird, okay? And one other thing that I saw, back in those days, I was doing my radio show on CRN, the cable radio network. And I was doing it Saturday night. This was at the time of the Hale-Bopp comet, okay? My wife and I got back from the studio. She went inside. I had a pickup truck at the time, and I brought my binoculars with me. And I thought I'd sit out here for a little bit, and I just look at the sky, look at the comet, all that kind of stuff. And suddenly, in the corner of my eye, as I've got my binoculars up, I saw something moving. And I stopped, I focused on it. It was a tiny pinpoint light, but my God, was it streaking. I dropped the binoculars to see if I could see it with my naked eyes. I couldn't. I had to go back up. And in the time that it takes to tell this story, this thing crossed the horizon from south to west. It was breathtaking. What it was, I have no idea. I don't think it was a meteor. It wasn't coming in. It certainly wasn't a satellite because they don't move like that, and they're usually in a stationary orbit. Or if they do move, it's very slow. This thing was like the Roadrunner on steroids. So yeah, I have no doubt there is something there. Now, that's where I stop. Because over the years, I have heard stories by the thousands, okay? And most of it would make you crazy because the thing that I've always been very upset about, because I was a professional investigator, people do not use, or many people do not use their common sense, okay? They don't stop, they don't step back, they don't take a look at the problem and then try to think around it. So many immediately think outside the box when it's not warranted. So anyway, that's my little rant, Wolf. And I'll shut up now because you're the guest on this show. But I wanted you to know where I was coming from.
No, I appreciate that, to be honest. And I identify with a lot of things you say because I also started somewhat as a believer. I think I was always a skeptic. But, you know, I'm born 1982, so I grew up in the 90s. At that time, the X-Files were huge. So that's where we were like familiarized with all these narratives. I listened to Art Bell pretty early on. You know, I discovered his show, all these characters that would be appearing on that. And that are still some, you know, like George Knapp and all these people, they're still around today. For example, I also remember vividly the 2001 Disclosure Project. I think I only saw that a bit later when YouTube was a thing, like mid-2000s. But the Dr. Stephen Greer event that he did in front of the National Press Club, like that was also something where I was like, holy moly, right? Like, there's got to be something to this at that point. I wouldn't call myself like a believer, but I was somewhat on board that there must be something to it simply for the sheer amount of stories that are out there and experiences that people claim to have had. And then also like one clip that I've never seen anything myself. Like I can't come up with my own great UFO stories like Don just did. But I remember vividly, like a thing that really brought me on board at the time was this NASA STS-75 tether incident video. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. You probably are, right? Like it's a video.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was. It obviously it came from NASA, and it shows a tether that's like 11 or 12 miles long, drifting away. It's unfortunately somehow unlocked itself and drifted away into space. Forms like a long line, like a ruler, and suddenly you see all these identical circular ships, seemingly, right? Because they all looked identical and round with a hole in the middle, flying behind it, and you clearly see it flying behind the tether, which gives you an indicator of the length, right? So you're like, they all look the same. They seem to propulse somehow. What is it? And that blew my mind. So at that time, I showed it to people and I spoke about it. I wasn't trying to convert people or was really a believer, but I was quite on board. But then as you go through these years, right, and you look at more UFO documentaries, you read more books, you read more interviews, you just look at this over a period of 15, 20 years. Just to be honest, I just can't come to any other conclusion but that most of it is a charade, like you guys mentioned in the beginning as well. However, I think there's, just going to what you mentioned, Don, there are two things here for me. There is stories that people tell me, experiencer stories, right? I have no reason to doubt that you experienced all these things. I'm completely on board. And anyone who comes to me and openly and genuinely, like you just did, tell me a story like that, of course I believe it. I have no doubt to believe it. But then, and we can see this increasingly in the last 10 years, ufology has also become like a massive, massive business, right? That is built around, certain pillars, I almost want to call it, certain personalities, often somewhat eccentric personalities that now sell us this new version of ufology, right? And I kind of love that because it really becomes like a parody almost. It doesn't help the subject. It doesn't help the credibility of ufology, what these people are doing. But I somewhat enjoy the theater that ufology has become now. Also, I do want to mention a few more people because you mentioned Stanton Friedman and a few other, and I would just want to add a few more people to this that have been really influential to me. And I'm not sure you guys are familiar with them, but like, for example, Victor Colero is a researcher. He's great. Like, he did really good work on Bob Lazar. I did this big video that I did. It's got like almost 1 million views now about Bob Lazar. That was his research, right? So I often look at research other people do, verify their stuff, and then do videos about it. Tom Mahood is someone else, also incredible researcher in my opinion. I think otherstories.org is his website. Really good stuff, really good work on some of these cases like Bob Lazar as well. So there's a few. There's also Philip J. Klass, and I'm like you mentioned Mick West.
I knew all these people, Monkey.
Yeah, right. Okay, good. I just want to.
I knew them all. I've been to Bob Lazar's house. Okay. I sat down. I interviewed him in his house.
And how was that? How was that?
Well, I'll tell you, and this is the exact same thing I've been saying since about 1991. When I was in the Army, I was involved in military intelligence. Okay? Primarily in Southeast Asia, in Vietnam during the war. And then when I became a police officer and later a detective, okay, I interviewed people all the time. And I use a term, and these guys will tell you, both Mark and Gary, that I have a pretty refined bullshit detector. Okay? I had to have one. When I was working on well, for example, a homicide case or an armed robbery case or a rape case, I basically had to have an inkling whether the person I was talking to was trying to bullshit me or give me the real facts. So Bob Lazar, I used that. As a matter of fact, I've interviewed Lazar on the radio 4 or 5 times over the years. And my feeling about him never changed. I totally believe he believes what he said. Okay? Now, does that mean it really happened? No. But he believes it happened. I am convinced of that. And in recent years, things that Lazar has talked about is seemingly being proven out to some extent. Okay? Now, did he really work on a propulsion system? Look, when he came out back in the early 90s with a video talking about gravity waves and the propulsion unit that he worked on, he worked with then his very close friend, a guy by the name of Gene Huff. Are you familiar with that name?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was over there. Okay. I was over there, as a matter of fact, when the state of Nevada was trying to stick him into prison, okay, over working alongside a madam of a house of prostitution. There was a lot dealing with that case. And I traveled over there and I gave him some advice from my standpoint, and so on and so forth. Now, I got to say this about Bob Lazar. I've never liked him. Okay? Never liked him. He's a standoffish kind of guy. And he's a guy that he has that, at least this is what I found then. I haven't talked to him in years, but he had that smug, self-assured, I know a shitload more than you do, if you know what I'm talking about. Okay? But when it came down to his story in all those years, and believe me, I know what I'm talking about when I tell you this, I have dealt with hundreds, if not more, in the UFO field. And they would come out originally with a intriguing, engaging story. But as time moved along, they had a little taste of celebrity. And that celebrity became a narcotic to them. They wanted to have more and more. And over a period of time, their story would evolve and become more comprehensive, and more amazing things would pop out. One of the guys that I'm talking about that I witnessed that with was a retired Army Sergeant First Class by the name of Cliff Stone. And when I first encountered Stone, he had been procuring documents. He was a hell of a document procurer. And then his story evolved until he was this James Bond type UFO intelligence guy. Horse shit. Okay. I knew the guy. I've been to his house. All right. Don't tell me that, Cliff. As a matter of fact, he called me up one day at the magazine, and I'm not going to go into the story, but he told me one of the most ludicrous stories you've ever heard in your life. And I'll just give you this much. Allegedly, 3 guys stopped by his house. He didn't know them. MIB types. Told him to grab his jacket. They had something they wanted to show him. They drove him out to the desert. Stone had taken his revolver with him. This is what he's telling me. And when they got out there, one of the guys said to him, "Oh, I know you've got a gun, Cliff. I want you to pull it out and shoot at me." Okay. Now, can you imagine this? Hearing this from somebody, you're thinking, what the hell is this guy eating? Mushrooms or what? Well, I said, "Well, what happened?" He said, "Well, I couldn't help myself. I pulled the gun out and I shot at him." And I said, "You shot at? What happened?" "Nothing. The bullets didn't hit him." I said, "Cliff, I ain't got time for this horse shit. Goodbye." And I hung up on him. But you see, that's what I'm talking about. This little bit of celebrity, and it becomes addicting. Now, Lazar, never. His story never changed.
That's
ever.
The problem. That's the problem.
He never, let me finish.
All right, man.
He never went out on the lecture circuit. He never performed before audiences getting paid. Okay. He never did any of that. And the government, the big G, the U.S. federal authorities went after him. Okay, now he had worked on some government contracts, making radiation detectors, among other things, okay? And they raided his shop because on one of George Knapp, and I've known George for 35 years, one of his broadcasts with Lazar talked about a element that at the time did not exist called element 115, that, according to Lazar, allegedly was what powered the craft, okay? And actually, it wasn't him. It was Gene Huff. And if I'd have been Bob Lazar, I'd have knocked Gene Huff on his ass. He let it slip that Lazar had brought out a wafer of this element 115 that supposedly was hidden somewhere. And the government raided his shop. I think they were looking for that. But there are a lot of areas in Lazar's story that, in my book, put him in a gray basket. I've never really discounted anything he had to say, but on the other hand, I never accepted it either. Like I said, my gray basket. Now, Mark is going to tell you his big boil on his ass.
Look,
okay,
hey,
is his academic background.
You
Okay.
were an investigator, and I get it. The bullshit detector ain't ringing. However, when asked about Caltech and MIT, give me a name of your teacher. He goes back to a junior college. He fucking lied.
Yeah.
He lied when they asked him for the names of his teachers. And
Yes.
when George Knapp said, you know what I did? I went and found guys who worked at Area 51, and I asked them what color was the toilets and what colors were the walls and how many lights did they have? And that's how we got together and said he must have worked there. Did you do that with his education, George? Did you bring him to MIT and walk around one Saturday and say, oh, here's where I ate lunch, and here's a girl I shagged, and her name was this, and never did any of that. The investigation was never done, never completed. Easy stuff to complete too, Don. They never did it.
Hey, have I ever argued with you about that?
Well, I'm just saying, to believe a story of with the investigation clearly not finished, I think that's a problem.
And there's other aspects to this as well that honestly, like, for example,
the use of element 115 has been around theoretically for 40 some years.
everyone knew
it's
that
not
we
like
would
it's
have
new.
like now at what element are we now? Like it's element 22 to 121 or whatever it is. I don't know. It was known that we would get it, and the what we have that is element 115 is not a stable element as far as I'm aware. So even that, right, for Bob Lazar, he claims he has, as far as I'm aware, somewhere stable element 115 stored, right?
Right.
Dude, how easy is it to prove your story? You come out with that, you're not only an international superstar, you can buy any house you want. If you come out with a stable, probably you can, if you don't want to be the famous celebrity, fine, you can retract yourself, but that would prove the story. And once and for all, he doesn't do it. He doesn't come out with it. There's always people coming forward and say, yeah, but he was in the phone book of
Lawrence Livermore.
Nevada.
What was the lab called? Los Alamos lab, sorry. So he was in the phone book of that, but he was listed as a Kirk Meyer, I believe was the company, right? Kirk Meyer contractor, which are technicians.
He was contracted to, he was contracted.
Yeah, right. So he did work at Los Alamos, right? And he did probably have access to some of these facilities, but he was someone who fixed things. I know you earlier, Don, said that he was like, what was it, radiation detectors or something? Now, that's a detail I wasn't familiar with. Yeah. It's possible that he fixed these kinds of things. So he had access there. And that also, in my opinion, may link back to this famous night where he took John Lear and others into the desert to see some lights above the area. Maybe he had seen a schedule as he was in Los Alamos of some tests. Maybe there was a thing on the wall. And he's a bright guy, right? He's not an idiot. He can read these things and possibly interpret it, bring people out there. and then get caught ultimately. So there's a lot of things that put Bob Lazar's story into question, and I don't buy it anymore. I used to be gray as well.
He could clear up. A lot of these he could clear up himself with the help of George Knapp, and they just won't do it because it's probably I don't know if it's more profitable, but it's easier, and you stay out of the weeds by just staying with the story. Just stay with the story.
And exactly, and in terms of profit, you mentioned that as well. It is true that he never did these speaking engagements and I do hold that as a credit to him. But he, for example, is selling his UFO sketches over on Instagram for like $100 a pop or something. I don't nail me down on the price, but they're not cheap. So it's like the argument that he never profited of it also doesn't really hold up. Look, I don't believe it. You can believe it. I think we'll never get the concrete answer. But one final word on this. There's a thing coming out. I'm not sure you're familiar with this. It's called Project Gravitur. And it is a piece of software that recreates Bob Lazar's experience in S4. They collaborate with him. And it's a VR experience. So you wear goggles and you feel like you're in the space and you can go through it. I think Don should do that. I think you should get Don to walk through S4. Like I think it'd be fun. I'd watch that, you know.
So didn't Loeb come out? No. Not Loeb, but the other professor who just came out and called bullshit on the whole story. The problem I have with him, Green, what's that guy's name? He just came out and he called bullshit on the whole story.
Which story?
The Lazar story. Oh. And he supposedly talked to the lady who was his boss. It just came out. I sent it out to the list. Anyway, it's a cool story for him to come out. Oh, his name's right there. But he has nothing to back it up, almost like Grush. Well, I talked to this person, I talked to that person, and it's all bullshit. Well, that's a cool story.
Yeah, and I think everyone loves a good story, and everyone loves the Bob Lazar story, whether you believe it or not. I love it. Like I think it's great. It really captured my imagination when I first heard it, and I almost don't care whether it's true too much. It's like I just, it's the old time of ufology, right? The time when Jaime Maussan would hold 2-hour lectures at some UFO congress and would show all these videos. 2/3 of them are clearly fake and some balloons, but still, he would talk about it with this passion and dedication, and it made me feel warm and fuzzy inside at the time. And I think Bob Lazar is part of that nostalgic legacy that I have.
Hey, Wolf, sometimes warm and fuzzy is all you need.
Well, it's proof. It's proof that you're new to it, because if you would have been going to see Jaime Maussan speak in the 90s like I did, and then have lunch with him and ask him concrete questions about the videos and have him say, I don't know, I didn't do the videos, right? Or sitting in a meeting in an after conference meeting with Richard Hoagland that I paid $30 for 2.5 hours while he just pontificated on everything under the sun. It was cool in a way, but after 40 years of this, man, right?
Yeah,
after 40 years, and we still see pilots there. I'm not going to bag on pilots, but people say, well, if you're a pilot, then you're like a trained observer. How many pilots are seeing Elon Musk satellites constantly and shooting them and saying, look what I saw, look what I saw. I did it. I called up Don. I was freaking out. Oh, my God, Don. Oh, my God. And then I went onto YouTube and I said, oh, man, it was a train of those stupid satellites, which I had never seen before.
Now, you know how I feel all the time, Mark. By the way, I want to point out Warm and Fuzzy was one of Lazar's hookers.
Oh, nice.
Oh, damn. I did not know that. That was not intended.
I'm kidding. There's no such hooker.
Okay, I thought there's like serious research behind it.
This is why he's our resident shithead.
Resident shithead. I say fucked up shit. It's my job.
So do you ever like leave the studio, go to conferences and stuff, or you basically just do this at home?
I would love to do it more, to be honest, but I don't have the time. I have a full-time job, and I do have a family with 2 kids, right?
So, okay.
Right.
Okay.
So I'm pretty.
Your family has 2 kids, or you have 2 kids?
It works in mysterious ways. I can't really put my finger on how it works. But no, I'm full on. But obviously, I live in London, so this is a big capital. to be honest, I don't look out for that stuff. Sometimes my community points it out to me, and then they send me to these conferences. I'd love to do more and just interview people, just get kind of some of their stories. Yeah, I've done
You're
some
in
of
London, huh?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. And I've done one. So, for example, in London, there's like famously the most haunted prison in London. It's like, not in London, it's like 3 hours away from London. Most haunted prison in England. So my subscribers found that out, and then they paid for me to go there. So I spent a night in that prison.
Oh, nice.
And I didn't see anything. What a surprise.
Did you feel anything?
Not much. To be honest, it got somewhat cozy by the end of it. I walked through this giant prison from like the 1400s or whenever it opened. It was wild. And you're basically on your own. There were like a few remote ghost hunters walking around, but and they haven't like an execution chamber. There's a lot of really morbid history in that place that was told to us in the tour beforehand. I walked around in that place till 4 a.m. on my own with flashlights. I try to trigger anything that I've learned in ghost hunting shows. Absolutely nothing. And by the end of it, it got kind of nice because I got familiar with the place. And it was kind of nice to walk through this giant structure at night in the dark.
Yeah.
It wasn't even scary, to be honest. Yeah.
So share with us a bit of the hate you get on the internet. I love it. I love the hate.
Do you get some hate? Do you get some? I never see it
not
in your
a lot.
comments.
Not a lot. I'm going to be honest. Not a lot. Like every now and then,
people... I never see any.
So sometimes I don't delete comments. So I do get comments from believers sometimes who are like, "Oh, you don't know," and then they hammer something they read somewhere in the chat or in the comments, and it's just factually wrong. I don't reply to that. But like, for example, I don't get severe things like death threats or someone trying to dox me. No,
good.
So far so good. Knock on wood, right? Yeah.
Well, I think it might be the way you present the information is as much poo-pooing it as interested in it. So
I get a lot of messages like from Gary earlier where he said, "You almost converted me into a skeptic." I get a lot of those messages, to be honest, because not just me, but Mick West and some others we spoke about earlier, we've been like chipping away at it for a long time. And the truth is, again, my experience, anything that comes out within a short amount of time, there is either a very reasonable or a literal debunk way, like a reasonable explanation or debunk. And yeah, it's just, it feels at this point like an ever-repeating circle, right? Like here's a piece of footage, or someone teases something. Here's Ross Coulthard. We get the egg-shaped UFO, guys, in less than 72 hours. The next whistleblower. And then something happens. It's a huge disappointment. Then we get a break for 3 days. And then the next guy comes forward. Here's Jeremy Corbell. Oh, yeah, we got, I don't know, next guy, Matthew Brown or whoever it is now lined up. Right. And it just feels like a charade. Like that side, I love the stories. I love stories like Don's stories earlier. Like I believe it. I have no reason to doubt it. But like this side of it is for me, it's ridiculous. I don't know how anyone can take it serious.
No, there's a guy in the chat, Bino, from Australia,
yeah,
and he says you have to look at the issue from other perspectives, not just the science and 3D reality. It's far stranger than we could have imagined. Cheers, Wolf. Well, on one side, yeah, sure, for entertainment. But if you were actually looking into this, like Don was, as you know, with the magazine and with his background, detective and all that, while that might add something to your personal beliefs or something like that, that doesn't put any feet on the road. That doesn't get anything done. If you want to get it done, the egg was proven to be horseshit. The chandelier, the jellyfish, all of this was proven to be horseshit. So I could look at that stuff in that mindset and maybe get something else out of it. But the reality of it is they were proven to be bullshit. That's super important.
Well,
way more important than pontification.
Roughly 30 years ago, UFO Magazine, I began a series in the magazine that ran for several years called The Whistleblowers. Okay? And at that time, there were certain names in the field that were making some grandiose pronouncements about various things dealing with the UFO situation. One of them, okay, and this went back to John Lear. I knew John Lear really well. And all the people in Lear's orbit, okay? And one of the big things that came out from Lear was the U.S. government, through a secret treaty, signed this secret treaty with a alien nation, okay, that in an exchange of technology, the government would allow these aliens, if that's indeed what they were, to abduct people, conduct cattle mutilations, these types of things, all right? Now, the cattle mutilation thing kind of hit me because in 81, 82, as a investigator, a criminal investigator, I was dispatched to investigate 2 cattle mutilations, all right? And I've talked about that, I think, many times on this show, but those cases were never solved, ever. As a matter of fact, the department that I worked in, basically wanted these shoveled under the rug because by this time, literally thousands of cattle had been mutilated or were in the process of being mutilated all over the western and southwestern United States, even as far back as my home state in Pennsylvania. Plus, there were other stories coming out of cryptid creatures that were being reported all across the United States. Bigfoot, of course, is one, all right, that's been seen virtually everywhere. My God, if they were as numerous as these stories make out, you should see them walking down the damn street. I never have, but, you would think so. So anyway, yeah. So this whistleblower series, I began doing in-depth investigations on a number of these people. Now, one of the biggest names was Milton William Bill Cooper. For 3 years, this maniac, this lunatic, this alcoholic drunk, okay, was going out doing...
Call the lawyers, Bill.
Yeah, was out doing crazy stuff. I had a buddy that was a cop down in Long Beach, California, okay, where Cooper was at for a period of time. He had married an Asian woman, okay, from, I forget now where it was. It might have been Singapore or somewhere. They had a little girl, and Cooper was getting drunk all the time. And when he got drunk, he would get violent. And when he got violent, he would do violent things. And after I did my first expose on him, he came after me. And I said, look, if you want to come out and see me, I'll be happy to give you a goddamn map to my front door. Okay. And he's like most bullies. All right. If he knows he can't bully you, he'll just run his mouth. And that's what he did. Now, ultimately, he got in a shootout with police officers after a series of his violent outbursts, shot a police officer in the head. He was shot down and killed by the police. This was in Edgar, Arizona. And he's no longer among the living. But he wrote a book called Behold a Pale Horse. And Mark, tell them about that book. Where's it?
That book is one of the biggest books in prisons. In prisons, it's like they give you the book and they say, now bend over in front of me and read this book. And that's what they do. They love that book.
Oh my God.
Hey, yeah. Don, we're about going to break.
2 minutes.
2 minutes.
2 minutes. We got to take a break in 2 minutes. Well, what do you think? What do you think there, Wolfie?
No, maybe I just quickly can also engage with the question that the chatter had earlier, right? What was it? Yeah, right. He said like I should look at both sides. I think he said.
Well, look more to the metaphysical, possibly things of that sort.
To that, I would say like I've kind of done that for 20 years, and then I decided it's kind of not real to me. Like, you know, at least I've looked at it for a long time. I've entertained the option, and to be honest, I would shoot this back at him and say like he or she should start to entertain the option that this mythicism that he describes, I think he used the word mythicism or something similar, that's a product. You know, people are selling that mythicism. This is something that they put out there, that they intentionally, it's a button they're pressing. And I know, again, it comes back to this warm, fuzzy feeling. Like, don't fall for that kind of stuff, you know? But anyway, do we have to do the break now? Is that what it is?
No, we've got 1 minute.
Okay, we got 1 minute. Okay, so then really quick, on the 2 points you made as well. So John Lear, obviously love the guy, you know, but in terms of the cattle mutilation.
Loved who?
John Lear.
Loved who?
Okay, what? John Lear.
No.
John Lear loved who? You said he loved the guy.
I love the guy. Sorry.
I
love the guy.
Because of his stories about the moon. 50 million
I love the stories that
moon.
he told. But the cattle mutilation, the thing I read about it, they did a study, I think a university, they put the cattle out in the field, several cattle, and they left it in different areas. And the results were shockingly similar to cattle mutilation. That doesn't debunk the whole thing, but it's an alternative angle.
Right. It doesn't. That's the whole problem. You can't debunk the whole thing.
Okay, 10 seconds, guys. Let's go ahead, take the break. And when we come back, more with our very special guest tonight. YouTube calls him the sneezing monkey, but I call him Wolfie. And with that, stick around. We'll be back.
Hold on to your seats, Cosmic Explorers. KGRA Digital Broadcasting, the unrivaled #1 source for raw, uncensored paranormal and UFO talk radio, has just unleashed a sizzling online merch store. Stay cosmic on the move with accessories, rugged phone cases, vibrant yoga mats, and notebooks perfect for jotting down UFO sightings. Ignite your obsession with the unexplained through bold, exclusive gear that demands attention. Kicking off with the Supernova, the store launches 2 heart-pounding collections, KGRA Digital Broadcasting and Bishop James Long. Every item you grab helps power the network and its groundbreaking shows. Stand with the truth seekers. Act fast, score your stellar swag, and join the uprising today.
From Iraq and Afghanistan, our brave warriors are coming home, wounded. Some with wounds you can see, some with wounds you can't see. Wounded Warrior Project was created to support our men and women coming off the battlefield. Please help carry these warriors the rest of the way home. Get involved at woundedwarriorproject.org.
MUFON is the voice of thousands of like-minded people who want to see change. We speak up against UFO secrecy. We engage governments and agencies around the world on the topic. We share information with the public through our journal, website, newsletter, social media, and even our own TV channel. When you join MUFON, you add your voice to the cause. Few things are more important in our time than understanding the UFO question. Join MUFON. Find your friends.
And we are back with our very special guest. I almost said Wolfie, but I'm saying the sneezing monkey. Okay, I'll call him Wolfie.
Eric Davis. Eric Davis was the one who released the video while he was bashing Lazar, and he was backing it up with a whole bunch of historical information and all that, right? I'm not saying he's wrong or right, but it's, again, he's a smart guy. He's been around, much like the guy in the 3-Eye Atlas, right?
Don't talk to me about Eric Davis.
I'm just saying that he had interesting information. So, Monkey, let's talk about your current view and what you think based on your current view and your research done from your armchair, which is the same way that I do it.
It's true.
3-Eye Atlas. What is it, and should we be worried?
No, to be honest, no, we absolutely should not be worried. I think it's pretty much projected the path it's going to go. I think its path is behind Mars. Like, it does not pose a threat. But it, like Hale-Bopp, we spoke about it earlier. I think it's probably going to be similar to that. We will see like a beautiful, phenomenon in the sky, a meteor with a little blue line behind it or something. I think that's what it's going to be. I'm not concerned at all. To be honest, I saw the Avi Loeb story, and that he now Ross Coulthard called him out and stuff. There's a little bit of fighting going on between those two.
Who's called out Russ Coulthard?
Avi Loeb. He's a professor.
No, who's called out Russ Coulthard? He's a bullshit. He's a bullshit merchant.
Well, right, but in this case, it was Coulthard who was saying his people.
Yeah, I know.
And Loeb basically said in a nice way, shut the hell up, you're not a scientist.
Yeah, he basically called him like more or less like a disinformation agent or something, trying to hide it. So, but here's the point. This is some kind of freaking comet. That's all it is, okay? And it's going to be another giant nothing burger. And all this is, in my opinion, is them trying to monetize on something. Here's this cosmic mystery. People love a good story, so let's do a bit of infighting. I can't speak for Ross Coulthard and Avi Loeb, right? But
did you hear what I said at the beginning of the show when I was opening up the show about something impacting it?
Yeah,
I know.
Have you heard anything about that?
I have not, to be honest. So I'm happy to talk about that and be educated on that. I'm not familiar with that.
Well, I saw it on the internet.
Well, that's exactly where I saw it. Okay.
Right.
Now I'm like I said, and I prefaced it. Well, I don't know if this is true or not, but I saw 2 reports on it. I did find it interesting, if true.
See, what drives me crazy, Monkey, is this. I used to love Mystery History and Mystery History 2. They're 2 channels, right? Mm-hmm. And I used to watch them a year and a half ago, because they really did a whole really good stuff on stuff that's on the earth, and we don't have any answers for them, giant rocks and all that stuff. Now, every day it seems there's something under something else. Giant caves here, this under here, this under there, and I watch it, and they show like 3 stills, and they zoom in and out, and they move them left and right, the stuff that we can do on our cell phones, and they talk for 30 minutes about this horse shit, and I finally had to unsubscribe, because it drives me crazy that there's so much of this. Once the pyramids, the things underneath the pyramids that left, haven't heard about that, like the drones, have you? No, you haven't. That left, so then now there's something under something in Australia. Now, Bird was right, and there's giant dinosaurs in the earth, and it just goes on and on and on and on. Yeah. You just want to wash your hands of the whole thing and go masturbate.
Hey, that's me every day anyway.
No, I mean, you're right. The story under the pyramids, it is ridiculous. To be honest, I think a lot of this, in my opinion, is dictated by algorithms and interest of people. So a while back, if you go back 20 years, the stories were slightly more on the ground, the conspiracy theories, if you want to call it, slightly more grounded, if you can say that. But people, as they create this content, whether it's on national television stations or on YouTube channels, realize, if they cater to those beliefs, that the more wild you go, the better the ratings are, the more money you make, and so on, right? So we're pushing it for 20 years in terms of absurdity, and that's how we get that's on one hand how we get absurd stories, but that's on the other hand how you get an audience that is willing to receive and believe the most absurd stories, that 20 years ago nobody would have believed. I mean, let's be honest, like the flat Earth theory.
Oh God.
Somewhat believed by people, and it even got so far that other people are like, well, we got to listen to those guys, listen to their arguments. Like, no, I really do not need to listen to their arguments, honestly. Like,
it's very interesting that when Graham Hancock put the first thing on, it was Netflix, I guess, that was very interesting, right? You don't have to believe it, but he was out there. He's measuring things. He's showing things. Isn't it interesting that after he did that, this exploded with archaeology and all of the stuff after that? But that was at least based on grunt work and photos and videos and going to talk to people. This stuff is based on John Lear. When we had him on and he was saying the stuff about the moon, and I said, I butted in, as Don knows I like to do, and I said, so do you got any proof? And this is what he said. Well, you're just going to have to believe me.
Trust me, bro. You got to trust me, bro.
Exactly. Now, do I have proof that there aren't 50 million people underneath the surface of the hollow moon and they're working? No, I don't have proof, but I don't have to prove it. I'm not making that claim.
Yeah, I love that you bring up Graham Hancock and the early kind of ancient aliens, if you want to call it that kind of.
Yeah.
Also Eric Van Daniken and some of these names you can bring up there. But like, you're right. To be honest, I think the general idea to ask questions also about mythicism in archaeology is totally justified. Like, how did that freaking rock get there, right?
Right, exactly.
But then you need to be able to do the research, put the work into also find the answers. And if you have, I don't know, 500 experts in archaeology saying that's how they got there, like the most likely, it is probably what it is. It could also be aliens with a levitation device. But you know what I mean? Like, at some point you got to weigh up probabilities. So yeah, I feel sometimes, people are falling short of that.
Well, mainstream academia, and it could be any discipline you want to talk about. It could be archaeology. Those people, for the most part, are cowardly. Very few are ever willing to look outside the box. Okay. Now, for example, Baalbek, one of the most mysterious sites, in my opinion, anywhere on the planet.
Yep.
Here is a temple, which the Romans basically built the temple, but they built it on those stones that were in the vicinity of 900 to 1,000 tons in weight each. And they're basically built meticulous detail, okay? You could barely even squeeze a sheet of paper in the cracks. They're so finely built. Who in the hell, especially multi-thousands of years ago, could have moved around a 900 or 1,000 ton stone, meticulously carved and fitted stone, and not just one, but numerous? Academia doesn't even want to touch that. They refuse to look at it.
Yeah, because they can't answer it. So
exactly, much like the Smithsonian Institute. Okay. Back in the 19th century, there were a number of giant skeletal remains unearthed in various ancient grave sites that were sent back to the Smithsonian. Did you ever see any of those on display? Purportedly, they got that stuff. They were so freaked out about it that they destroyed it and threw it out. Now, that's not just a story. These things were documented in many cases. So what do you do with something like that? They're cowards.
Well, they said that they say that this is as far as I know about it. They say the documentation for the cave in the Grand Canyon that supposedly had very interesting things in it, right? The
Egyptian artifacts. Allegedly.
Yeah, and even weirder. But the documentation for that is an article in a newspaper. Well, that isn't scientific documentation, for one thing, because I can show you other documentation in the Inquirer with Monkey Boy and stuff, right? Or Sneezing Monkey, if you will. So
Yeah,
I'm
now
not
you've been
saying it's
demoted to
not
Monkey
there, and I
Boy.
know they won't let you into certain places there for various reasons, okay? But much like the Lazar story, that's a good place to jump off, but that isn't scientific documentation. That's a story that somebody told or somebody made up or whatever and was published in a newspaper, right? So not saying the cave isn't there and all that. I have no clue, but we do fall into that trap where we'll say, well, that's documentation. That's by the hand of God that guy was there and he wrote it up or he told the story to somebody else. Well, no, it's not. It's not.
I think also in this bigger ancient alien story, whether it's Baalbek or how they moved the stones, or even questions about the Egyptian pyramids, I think one aspect to this that we living in 2025 underestimate is how little a life was worth back then, and how they just burned through slaves. Like, it meant nothing to them.
Yeah.
They just had people disposable. It didn't mean anything. So they're just grinding through these slaves. And it's like, how many did die today? We don't know. A few. So we replace them tomorrow with others. And like, obviously that for us today, it's like a horrible thing. And like this disdain for human life, we have ethic standards. At that time, that didn't exist in that form. So it's not an answer. It's not an answer to this, or gives answers to how they moved the stones in Baalbek. But
I kind of like what Graham does. He'll show the stuff. He'll come up with his own sort of, well, maybe this or maybe that. That's fine. But at least he'll show the stuff, kind of like In Search Of. And just leave it alone, right? But you can't leave it alone now. You have to come up with an answer.
There's one beautiful piece of footage that I want to plug here that everyone who's watching this should watch if you're interested in like the ancient alien stuff. And that is a film, you may have seen it. It's on YouTube. It has no ads. It's called Ancient Aliens Debunked. It's a 3-hour film that someone created. It's amazing. Go watch it. It is, I think the guy is an archaeologist himself, or I don't know what his background is, but he shows the footage specifically from the first seasons. It's like 12 years old, that film. But, he shows the footage, explains this, shows the footage, explains it, and one by one. And once you've seen that, like, it answers so many questions. It's called Ancient Aliens Debunked, 3 hours on YouTube.
I would give Van Donegan some respect, some props that he was one of the early guys to sort of look into this stuff and all that. But if you've seen some of the stuff after the fact, like Don says, building upon it, and he would say stuff in the documentaries, and he would say, well, there's this shale material. Well, that shale material is from the craft. It's like, what are you talking about? Well, of course, because he has to keep it going.
Yeah, or when I remember this clip in the Ancient Alien episodes where they show the NASCAR lines, right? And it sits on this plane, right? It's like an elevated.
Right.
And here you have Giorgio Tsoukalos saying, the most mysterious thing is, the guy with the hair, the aliens meme guy. The most mysterious thing is, how did they move the rest of the mountain, right? It's like the whole 2/3. And it's like, I cannot believe that he's not doing this intentionally. He's not dumb. He knows that it's a plane. It exists everywhere in the world. It's just like,
hey, now, have you ever looked into, and this is a real place, have you ever looked into the Coral Castle in Florida?
Mm-mm.
Oh my God, dude! You've got to go do research on the Coral Castle.
Go there. Go on vacation. It's really cool.
This guy builds this thing by himself of giant pieces of coral.
Yes, I have heard of it. Now
right.
that I see it.
And then because his girlfriend breaks up with him or whatever, the other Wolf knows the story. He's been there twice. He takes it all apart and moves it and builds it again. And he has the truck, the flatbed, pull up and says, go take lunch. Come back and you can bring the stone. The guy comes back, the stone is on there. Nobody has any idea how he did this, right? Now, that's a current thing. That isn't a pyramid. That's not Baalbek. That's not Topeki. This is current, and yet we don't have an answer. Why don't we have an answer to it's current? It was like from what, the 40s or something? It's like, it drives me crazy. That exists. You can actually go there.
I've seen videos where
That's
single man move incredibly big blocks with clever use of levers.
Yeah.
Right, where they propel them forward. It's almost like a seesaw. It's like a seesaw effect where you find the balancing point, they move it forward. Also, the other thing, besides them having so many slaves and burning them, I think the other thing we underestimate is the intelligence of these people. They were not dumb. They could figure that shit out as well. And they had a lot of time because they didn't have TVs or even newspapers, anything. So loads of people wrecking their brains. They're not stupid, figuring stuff out. And I believe they found ways to move those rocks, wherever they are.
The answer for them at the period was, I have nothing else to do but this.
Yes,
I don't have a life. This is my life.
And then often on top of that, it featured into their belief, right? You were doing it for the gods, or you, in the case of the pyramids, you're working for it's the grave of the pharaoh. You're actually contributing to this piece that's for the gods. You got to put it in the context of that time and how these people were thinking. And then often that offers explanations.
Of course, I would say that the out of what are those things called? Out of time parts.
Anachronisms?
No. They do show it seems to be cutting lines and weird things, right? And holes that are drilled through. And how exactly with copper tools did we do all this, right? Now, there is no answers. People have come up with some weird stuff with some acids and stuff like that. But when you get right down to it, thousands and thousands and thousands of stones and stuff that were cut and all that. Wouldn't it be nice if they put a little bit more time into figuring that out than what a woman is or whatever the thing of the day is, right?
Wolf, let me ask you, how long have you been doing your channel now?
Actively about this subject for 3-4 years.
Okay. 3 or 4 years. In all that time, is there any one case or incident or occurrence that happened that you still are wrinkling your brow over?
I mean, people ask me that a lot, and the answer is probably the Commander Fravor case is often put forward. I just don't have an answer. There's a few other cases, like for example, I don't know if you guys saw this interview with Tim Phillips. Stephen Greenstreet interviewed Tim Phillips. He's like a senior, you're probably familiar with him, like a veteran as well. And he was the former deputy director of Arrow, right? And he mentioned in the end as well that he got the same question from Greenstreet. What cases were the most mysterious to you? And he said, I know of cases of giant triangles. And we've seen them. I'm not sure he specifically said I've seen them, but he knows that people have seen them. And that's something that puzzles him. So there are these things. I don't think they can't be explained. I think it's still a massive leap to go to aliens visiting Earth, in my opinion. I think there are many more earthly explanations before we should jump to that conclusion. But there are things we can't explain. And the Fravor case, I guess, is one of those.
Well, you did see, I would assume, that after the Arizona lights, like 2 decades after, a company released the photos and things of these inflatables. Giant inflatables, but they couldn't release them because it was for the government and all that. I thought that was interesting. I'm not saying there's a connection there, but they existed back then, and they were working on these things. When it comes to Faber, I got to ask you this. A friend he talked about this. He got fired, I guess, after 19 years. And my friend was postulating, how come nobody asked him what he was fired over? Because evidently you would assume he gave up his health care and he gave up his retirement. So what did they have on him and why did they fire him? And I wondered if you ever stumbled upon anything, because he said that he can't find anything on why he was fired.
Whether I heard something why your friend was
or have you in your research?
No, not really. But to elaborate on the thing you just said about the V-shaped inflatables, I did a lot of research, actually, in my opinion, on the Phoenix lights. And at that time, there's a company, you can Google it right now. It's called JP Aerospace. They're still around. They have a website.
Yes.
And they were building these huge inflatables. And that actually the CEO of JP Aerospace was asked about this. And he specifically said they were not testing them at the time in the desert. However, they were already selling these to the government at the time. So it is possible the government were testing them.
And that's
obviously
couldn't talk about it.
Obviously, right? So imagine that. Here's the government with these huge, and there's photos. If you go to their website,
They're
JP
giant.
Aerospace,
I mean,
they're huge.
just...
They are football field size.
Yes.
Like they are huge, right?
Yes.
And they have lights underneath on like a very lightweight truss. It's the perfect description of what people describe
of the second thing that happened.
Yes, right. So here's the government. They're testing this in the desert. Maybe the guy who roped it to the ground did a sloppy job, and that thing just drifts off, right? That it escaped. So what are you going to do now? Drifts towards Phoenix. What are you going to shoot bullets? I mean, this is not going to go down with like a small bullet. You're going to need a lot of bullets to bring a thing like that down. So you can't really do that. So you let it drift, and it drifts at night over Phoenix.
Kind of the analogy to the drones in some cases.
That's right. But lots of witnesses, obviously, people saw it, described a similar thing.
Yep.
But then ultimately, it drifted over the city. It drifted away, and it flows silent. Now, I did a video in which I show the images of them and break that theory down in more detail, and it is one of the most hated videos I have ever made. People are so angry about this theory. They dislike it. They comment like, screw you.
Well, because it's a bit too much on the nose.
Well, that's just it. Listen, Monkey, because you know this as well as all of us know this, that the one of the greatest technological jumps is with drones. And this is problematic now. As video technology increases, it increases with the potential of more fraud from drone.
For sure. Yeah, no, you're right. I'm a drone pilot myself. I have a little drone here. I fly around with it sometimes. It's good fun. But no, I agree with you. But again, I don't really understand the hate for the
I do, man.
You do?
That's from the 90s, man. There are people who have embraced it, baby.
I know.
Of course. Just like the Meyer case, right? When people started to come out and recreate the Meyer stuff and all that, they got so much hate. Yeah.
And
that's the problem we have. And just to answer on this one, Monkey, there is a cult of ufology. And we see it with guys like Stephen Greer. These guys are selling you belief, not facts, not scientifically proven anything.
Yeah.
It's just, we want you to believe. And it's like, they were talking about it in the chat too. You know, the metaphysical shit. It's like, I don't want anything to do with that. I want facts. I want to see proof. I don't want to believe. I want to know.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, what do you think of that?
So I think you're exactly hitting the nail on the head there. And you can really witness this. There's been a strong move away from aliens. Nobody mentions aliens anymore. Did you notice this? Like in the past few years, it's really toned down the extraterrestrials come to Earth narrative. Now it is more about psionics. It is about the CSETI protocol. It's about meditation. It's about spirituality, enlightenment. We can connect with lights on the horizon. It's probably aliens, but we don't know. But it's consciousness. These are the words they're throwing around.
They want us to be better.
Right. I just want to, and really we're getting these religious connotations there, right? At this point, you're now selling me a belief. And you want me to visit retreats somewhere where the ticket costs thousands of dollars so I can meditate on a beach, you launch a bunch of flares on the horizon, and we all have an enlightening experience. That's how it feels, at least. I don't know if that's what happened. So it's, I don't like it. I'm not a fan.
Sounds like he's talking about Steve Greer.
Yeah, sounds
that's what I mean.
No, that's what you say. But then again, like Ross Coulthard has been seen to attend some of these events as well. Some of these meditation events to bring out the aliens. Look, it's a business. I don't support it. And I really think it can get into a creepy corner when we're getting too deep into this personality cult thing that some people seem to go down now. David Wilcock is another person. I've been following him, right? So he does weekly live streams now from his house somewhere in the mountains, surrounded by, I don't know what it is, mountain lions. And it's like, it's to be honest, it's a petty show. It's a petty show that he does for several, I think once a week he does it. But he also has these tendencies. It's very spiritual. And, he's not specifically on ufology, but he's selling people basically a religion that is built around a cult around him. I can see that a lot of these
Stephen
people...
Greer too, come on.
So,
it's the same thing.
I haven't seen them going all the way though yet, right? We're not in Jonestown yet. Do you know what I mean? Like we're not serving Kool-Aid.
Well, yeah, because we went there before and they all killed themselves.
Fair
Oh,
enough.
yeah, with Hell Bop. Yeah.
But to be honest, I am kind of waiting for one of these people to take this step to be like, I don't know, I'm buying a village and it's very expensive to live there, but it's like a retreat for the enlightened or something like this, where suddenly they bring people together in a place and it becomes this.
It's somewhere in South America or Bolivia or some shit.
Costa Rica.
So let's talk about Hellfire missiles. So they released that thing, right? And now I'm not an expert at it, but what drives me crazy about this is they'll release that footage. And before the guy releases it, he doesn't even say it's unconfirmed or anything. He just, here it is, guys. And then in the hallway, he says, "Oh, how did I get it? Oh, it was a dead drop, and all the metadata was cleared off the video."
Right.
So then I'm looking at this, going, "How do I know what I'm looking at here? How do I know that's a Hellfire? What is this thing? I have no idea what's here." But this guy who's supposedly the head or one of the heads of the UAP thing with Luna and all those lunatics, he releases it the same as the rest of them. "I haven't cleared this yet, but check this out." And then Mick West looks at it for an hour and says, "Oh, here's what it is."
Yeah.
Right?
It was Eric Burleson, congressman, right? Eric Burleson
So
forward.
it's so unprofessional to do something like that, just to throw it out there and say, "This is where it happened, when it happened, and what's going on here." Oh, really? Do you have anything to back that up except your story? No.
Yeah, it is a sad play. I mean, ultimately, it's an expression of desperation that they put this forward, and it's not the only case, right? We've seen Lou Elizondo in the congressional briefing holding up an image. Yeah, that was sent to me this morning by a pilot, I think. Like that's literally it. And it turns out it's again Mick West an hour later, and the Metabunk crew. They're just debunking it, and it's like an irrigation circle somewhere.
Right.
So yeah, these people are not vetting it because, again, I think. First of all, they don't have a lot that they can talk about. And if they then have something, they're okay, here's something. But then on the other hand, also, I believe for a lot of these people, it's not even about disclosure. It is not about an active and genuine effort to bring this kind of information to the people. It's a business. They're selling stories. That's what it is. And some people, they're very good at it, and they make you believe that story might be true. And I'm from the government and I work there. But ultimately, this is, in my opinion, it's a story trading business. That's what this side of ufology that we're talking about now has become.
So maybe what Don was saying was that if you release enough of this stuff and maybe you get lucky one time, you as a government official will be able then to sell it as, "We can't give you disclosure because of security, but look, we need more money for security."
Yes, money definitely plays a big role in this equation. I'm not an expert on how that works in the government, but that definitely plays a role. But here was one thing that I found really interesting. It comes back to this interview I briefly mentioned earlier. Did you guys watch this? The interview with Tim Phillips, the former deputy of Arrow. He was interviewed by Stephen Greenstreet. Remarkable interview. It did not get enough views at all and not enough attention, because here's what's going on. So this guy, right, Tim Phillips, he's a senior 45-year veteran of military and government services, again, former deputy director of Arrow. In this interview, he says that during his time that he worked in the government and in the Pentagon, for example, there was like a fake UAP program that they were showing to new recruits, people who just achieved, if I remember correctly, a top secret clearance or some certain clearance level. They would sit them in a room and give them a folder that is packed with like absolutely authentic looking like Hollywood level, that's what he said, UAP documents, right? And they would let them go through them and leave them in that belief for an hour, right? And then they go in and say, "Dude, it's all fake." They're like, "God damn it, for 1 hour you believe all that stuff is real." But the point is, these folders exist. A folder exists somewhere that is packed Hollywood level with this kind of information, with documents that have the right letterheads. Also in this interview, he claims that there was an active effort from the 70s, 80s, and 90s of the government to spread fake images, to even within employees, right, that would leave the government, plant fake stories on their desks so they would take them out there as a conscious and active disinformation effort. Because think about it, you don't want people to talk about that giant V-shaped craft that is actual technology and probably flew over Phoenix, because you don't want Russia to find out that we have this kind of stuff.
Right.
So you're actually quite happy that people say, oh, is it aliens? It's a quite convenient little narrative that is not grounded in reality in most cases, right? And that's why it is the most cost-effective way for the government to muddle the water, spread these stories, through people, through government officials, in my opinion, through people like David Grush, through people like Matthew Brown, who now come out on, I believe they've seen something, but what they've seen, was that planted? I don't know. We don't know. But what I can imagine is governments have an active interest to have low costs on getting people to not look deeper into the shit they're actually doing, right? And to have everyone talking about, to have a whole industry evolve with Lou Elizondos, Coulthards, Greers, and Corbells having podcasts left and right, and with conventions, that's perfect. That's amazing. You've just created a huge bubble of people fumbling about nothing, and you can work over there in absolute calmness. And it's so cheap because all you have to do is release a few documents or a little film of a balloon being hit by a missile that then deflates in the sky. It is so
you've got that
cost-effective.
whole rabbit holes that you have to ask: are they manufactured rabbit holes?
And we may have seen this similarly when Ray Santilli released the alien autopsy. People came forward and said, in the military, I saw this footage. Now, I'm not saying they saw the Santilli film footage, right? But maybe they did see something that was produced or whatever, and to see how people would react to it. Might have been real, might have been fake, I don't know. But at least it gets it out there, right? Alien autopsy, alien autopsy.
Exactly.
And then, of course, we have that new thing about the photos supposedly from Roswell.
Yes, I saw this too, right? Through the Freedom of Information Act, I think, right? They got this document. And I mean, did you see it? It shows a crater. When Don spoke about this earlier, the images of these impact fields it just showed a crater, and then people start to interpret into the little 12 pixels of dirt.
I think I see a face in there.
There's a head. Bro, I mean, I'm sorry, I can't take it serious. But look, I just want to say that's all just my perception of this, right? Oh, I'm blurry.
Well, right, sure.
And I'm not infringing on other people's opinion. Everyone can have their opinion. I do ridicule it sometimes. I'm sorry if I step on people's toes, but
no, don't
be sorry. Everybody needs a wake-up call.
Every show you do, you always end with, well, that's what I think. Let me know what you think. Comment down below. I like that you do that.
Yeah, because I genuinely care. I genuinely care. I'm fascinated by the variety of opinions and thoughts on the subject. And also, I think something that pushed me into doing more content about this and addressing it is a somewhat unifying subject. I don't know on what political side you guys are, and it doesn't matter because we can, it unifies us in this room and we can talk about it, exchange stories, theories, opinions, right? And it's a completely, in this political minefield that we're currently living in, it's a completely non-toxic space. Not completely, that's probably better.
Well, right.
You get what I mean. Yeah.
Right. It's very interesting. What really got me into it from the 80s on is I got laser discs, right? I'm very much into movies. And I got the Billy Meyer thing on Laserdisc. And at that point, there was nothing better. You could step through it. You could zoom in and all play in slow-mo. And when I saw that footage in there of the craft spinning above the canyon, the valley, with cars driving underneath it, I got to tell you, I spent as much time with that as my first Playboy, man. I kept playing it back and zooming it in, going, what the hell is going on here? And still to this day, if you look at that footage, there is no lines. There is no obvious hoaxery that goes on with that. Now, do I believe his case? 99.9% no. Can I say all of his stuff is fake? Of course I can. It goes back to the 50s. I have no idea if some of the photos might show something. But I look at that footage still to this day and I go, this is why you get sucked in. Because this is such a good piece of footage. It's not going like this. It's just sitting there spinning, gleaming with cars driving underneath it. I'm going, oh my God, it's like a Spielberg movie.
That's it. And I think exactly what you describe here, at least for me, these were each one of us had an experience like that connected to ufology. And now now in the state that ufology is now in, we're almost nostalgic about that. You know what I mean? We're looking back and we're missing that time where this piece of footage that we got on a laser disc or a VHS captured our imagination so much, right? Like you said, and like it really brought us into this world, and left us puzzled and mystified. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And sometimes I feel, I'm kind of destroying that, because like I said, people like Gary, they become more skeptical.
Yeah. Well, there was definitely a time. There was a time when I personally thought there was nothing in the world cooler than the pursuit of data, information, and truth in the UFO field.
Yep.
But like so many things, as time went on and more sketchy individuals got themselves involved in this, and then things like the William Moore admission at the MUFON Symposium in 1989. Do you know what that is, Wolf?
I know the MUFON Symposium, yeah. I'm not familiar with the exact point.
William Moore, do you know who that was?
The name rings a bell, but I can't pinpoint it.
Well, there was a time when he was the premier investigator into UFOs. He wrote the very first book on Roswell, okay? Back in late 70s, right into the 80s. He came out and admitted in July of 1989 at the MUFON Symposium that he had been involved in a military intelligence plot to disinform a civilian scientist by the name of Paul Benowitz, who had inadvertently got himself, Benowitz, involved in an extremely high-level, confidential, top secret test of some type, had been warned off by the military. He ignored them. Moore fed him knowingly disinformation documents, and this guy had been targeted, Benowitz, by the AFOSI, the U.S. Air Force's Office of Special Investigations, to the point where Benowitz was driven into a mental hospital. Okay? This is all a matter of very, very public record. And Moore, who at that time was one of the leading lights in the UFO research field, admitted this before hundreds. I was there, by the way. I watched him do it. I couldn't believe my eyes. Before hundreds and hundreds of people. And basically, he committed professional suicide right there on the spot.
Yep.
Although he's still trying to come back. I hope they never let that guy back in.
Yeah, to be honest, now that you broke it down, I do remember this. I did cover this in a live stream at some point. I broke this down. I remember that story, that he was one of the, just the voices out there that everyone spoke about. And then he kind of said, actually, I planted misinformation back in the days to an extent. And that is like a red thread. That's like, there's so many examples of where many years later, other stories come out or additions are being made to stories, and then it kind of crumbles and falls apart. But maybe I'm too harsh.
Feet of clay, my friend. Feet of clay.
Well, but to be honest, I'm super in admiration and envious that you were there in these moments. And you said earlier that you knew John Lear very well. Do you want to elaborate on that? Because I'm like, I know John Lear, I'm really sorry, in my personal opinion, was like a royal bullshitter. He's told so many stories, but he impacted ufology. I mean, a lot of the grays, like the idea of the gray aliens as we know them, traces back to some of the claims and stories that he told. So I am very fascinated with the person of John Lear, also because how he impacted Balthazar story. So I want to hear your take on that.
Sure. It's and I can give you chapter and verse of where a lot of that came from. John Lear, in 1987, I had just purchased my very first computer system. Okay, in 1987. It was a Tandy Radio Shack 1000EX computer. And I compounded that major error by getting a telephone modem, which allowed me to connect, with other computers. There was no internet then.
True. Yes.
So anyway, I was on CompuServe, and I found an area on CompuServe. It was a pay-as-you-go service called the Issues Forum. And I was rooting around in there, and I came across a couple of reports of cattle mutilations. Now, like I had mentioned, I had investigated too back in the very early 80s. So I was curious. So I started rooting through this forum, and then there were a lot of articles and things in there about UFOs, UFO sightings, what have you. Then I came across one of the forum administrators was a guy by the name of Jim Spicer. And Spicer had a bulletin board system of his own in Fountain Hills, Arizona, called the Paranet. Well, I ended up basically getting in touch with him, and one of the articles they had was John Lear's very first paper that he wrote that went up on CompuServe and on the Paranet Alpha site. That was Spicer's. So I read this thing. Have you ever read it, by the way, Wolf?
No, I have not. No.
Well, you can probably still find it on the internet. But this thing was wild. Now, I didn't know who John Lear was. I knew the name Lear. Well, it turned out he was the son of William Lear, Lear-Sigler Corporation, the Lear jet.
I know.
And that John Lear, was a pilot. Apparently, according to Spicer, a very accomplished pilot. So I read this document, and there was a lot of crazy stuff in there. And I was brand new, man. In Nam speak, I was a cherry, okay? And I thought, well, this guy, I got to find out where this guy is at, and I got to call him up. So I talked to Spicer. He had Lear's number. I called Lear up, and we spent about 3.5 hours on the telephone. I mean, the guy was just totally open. So I was living in the state of Idaho then. And this was sometime probably in October of 88, I believe it was. And we talked. He said, I have all this information. Okay. Well, a week later, 1 week after I talked to him, a FedEx truck pulled up in front of my townhouse, and this driver got out and carried this big, it was a big bundle of stuff up to my front door. And I hadn't been expecting any. Well, it was John Lear. It was from John Lear, and it was all his research. This guy had gone out and Xeroxed all this stuff and put it together in a package, including 2 VHS tapes, and sent it to me. Well, God, I started rooting through that stuff. And I said, dude, I got to go down and see this guy. So I told him I'd like to come down and visit him. And he was in Las Vegas. And he said, sure, come on. Well, I got a plane ticket, flew down there. And he was just getting ready to give a talk in Vegas to the Association of Former Intelligence Officers. Well, before he did that, I had been out to his house, and he showed me a video. And buddy, that video blew my freaking mind. It was the Dallas Revisited video, JFK, President Kennedy's assassination. And in this video, it seemed to show the driver of the president's limousine firing the fatal headshot. Have you ever heard about that?
I have not. Oh, I'm not about that.
Oh
theory.
my God, that was the thing 25, 30 years ago. So anyway, he showed me this. Then I went to this meeting that he was talking at, and these people in the hall were all had at some point or another been involved in intelligence, now retired or out of service or whatever. But he asked them if on active duty you had been solicited to assist in the assassination of the President of the United States, would any of you gone along with that? Well, my God, 4 people in the crowd raised their hands. Once again, I couldn't freaking believe my eyes. Well, the driver that killed JFK's story, that is just in itself for a whole show. I found out who made the video. I found out why the video was made, etc. But you were asking about where a lot of Lear's crazy theories came from. They came from the man that was sent to the mental hospital, Paul Benowitz, who had been disinformed by Bill Moore and others. Rick Doty, does that name sound familiar?
Oh, yeah.
Piece of shit that he is. So anyway, yeah, this ended up being the bedrock where John Lear got a lot of his information. Part of it dealt with the aliens, the Greys, okay, are consuming human DNA.
Yummy.
Okay?
Yeah.
I did a very funny parody about that back in the day. I called it nutrient soup, but it was
hey, just real quick, if you want to see a primer on it that's good, go to the Y-Files, and he did a good thing on that guy, Paul Benowitz.
Fair enough. I'll check it out. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, anyway, Lear, a lot of that information came from Lear. Then Lear and another guy who at the time was an NCO, active duty in the Air Force, wrote a book called The Matrix. Okay? And every wild conspiracy theory you could imagine was in that book. Now, I asked John, okay, I like I said, I knew Lear pretty well. And I said, John, how in the hell can you come out with this shit? Where is your proof? Well, I believe it. Well, yeah, that's great. You believe it, but I don't. Convince me. Well, it's not my problem.
You got to trust me, bro.
Yeah. There it is.
You know what that reminds me a little bit of? That reminds me of artists. You go to artists and you say, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? And they say, that's not my problem. You figure that out. You figure it out, right? So I see that parallel there almost. Maybe Lear, do you think Lear really believed it? Do you think he really believed all this stuff?
I gotta tell you, some days I think he did. Okay. Hey, I'm going to tell you up front, dude. John Lear did not fire on all 6 cylinders in his engine. Okay. His father, do you know his father disowned him?
I did not know this. No. Wow.
His father disowned him. Lear flew for a As a matter of fact, it was John Lear that first told me about Bentwaters, the Bentwaters UFO case.
Mhm.
Okay. And he got it from a guy he knew in Southeast Asia. Lear flew for an air service called Continental, which at the time nobody knew, but it was under contract to the CIA. And he was probably, God knows what they were shipping around. Gold, narcotics, opium, I mean, you name it, to finance their war. You know, the CIA had their own war.
Mm.
And Lear was, he knew this guy who was in a military outfit called the Ravens, okay, that were also a very covert organization. And this guy who was a Raven had been to the UK, United Kingdom, right after the Bentwaters event happened at Christmas. And Lear told me about that. Well, as a matter of fact, Lear told me a lot of things. But I gotta say, I became very judicious in what I accepted and what I didn't. But yeah, it was, let me tell you, that was a crazy time. But it was still fun then.
Yeah.
It was still
exactly.
a modicum of fun.
No, it sounds like it, and it's a great honor to just talk to you about like someone who actually met John Lear and had all these conversations. And then obviously, what always fascinated me as well is like the research on how obviously John Lear and Bob Lazar were friends, and a lot of the stuff that Bob Lazar claimed, John Lear already claimed years before, that there is this S4 facility. As far as I'm aware, there are certain things he claimed. So also that connection, how do you think that happened? Was it just them having a drink and they're like, let's try it out?
No, it happened through Gene Huff.
Right. Yeah.
Gene Huff was an appraiser, a property appraiser. And Lear, well, he's gone now. He passed away. Lear was always having some financial problems. Okay. He was not tied into the Lear fortune. As a matter of fact, it was his mother that often kept him financially afloat. Now, Lear's wife was like a casting director. She was involved in movie making and that kind of thing. But so Lear would periodically get his home refinanced to get the cash out, okay? And he met Huff there. And one day, Bob Lazar came over with Huff. And it went on from there. We're almost, actually, guys, we're almost out of time. Yeah, we are. I hate to say it. Monkey, we'll have to have you back, or you can get in touch with me through Gary or Mark. Guys, thank you. Great show tonight. We're out of time. We got to go before Bill comes down here to California, beats the hell out of me. So that's it. Everybody, have a good evening. Monkey, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. It was
show.
a real pleasure. It was really fun. I appreciate it. Thank you. Anytime.
You bet. And we'll see you next time. UAP Thursday, right here on KGRAdb, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 o'clock on the East Coast. Good night.
God bless Sam and Dean Winchester.